Good morning. Welcome to everybody who's joining us live on YouTube. Welcome to all the beautiful people here in the Zoom room. Glad to have you here. I'm James. Hey, do me a favor. Drop your city in the chat box. Let me know where you're logging in from, because we've been getting people from all over the world, and it's really cool to see who is showing up from where. San Francisco, Sunnyvale, LA, baby. Manchester, UK. Yay. Livermore, Oakland, cool. Montreal, hey, Montreal, thank you. Toronto, beautiful. Seattle, London, Manila. We got the Philippines in the place. Beautiful. New York City. Hey, Svetlana. Wisconsin. Hey. Oh, this is so cool. Oh, Dhaka, Bangladesh. Wow, thank you. Is it just me, or are we getting more people from around the globe every week?
You're not wrong. You're not wrong, James. Yeah, I think it's going up.
Carly, you and Marissa are becoming worldwide famous.
Internationally known.
Around the world, we're global citizens. Well, so cool to have you all here. We're going to get started in a little bit. I'm being shunned. 0 for life. And you have an older to be. Orchard Beach. Where's that, Mark?
It's in Maine.
In Maine. Maine's in the house. Good morning. Welcome, Maine. I think that's one of the 3 states I haven't been to yet. Maine, Vermont, and Rhode Island. I've been to all the others.
James, you've been to 47 states?
I have.
That's really cool. I hope you use that as a fun fact.
Okay. Well, I hope you offer the people a fantabulous prize for guessing that fun fact.
I think that's awesome. I feel like I've been to a lot of states and I've only been to probably 15.
Yeah, but I've been doing this for 200 years, so I get around. We got Channel Islands. Oh, wow. West Dallas, Wisconsin. Look at this. This is amazing. Look at all the people.
All right. I think it's almost time. I don't have my clock next to me, but I believe
it's 8:30.
Are we at time, James? Are we at time? Yeah, we're at time. Awesome. Everyone, I'm going to just mute you all, and then Marissa, my host, I'll have you unmute. But just to make sure that our sound quality stays great, I'm going to mute everybody, and we'll go ahead and get started. Awesome. Great. All right. Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Carly. I have met many of you before. It's great to see you back again. If you're new to Learn It, also great to meet you. I am our community lead here at Learn It, and so excited to be here with you today for using storytelling to sell your big idea in person or virtually with the one and only James Jeffley. And with me, I also have our community coordinator, Marissa Ruiz, and also Ben, I believe, who's our YouTube manager. I saw him sneak in here for a little while. So our whole Learn It team is here. And of course, James, who many of you also know if you've been tuning in week over week. For those of you, I'll just share with those of you who are new to Learn It, of course, welcome. We are a learning and development organization based in San Francisco, California. And really our mission is to help individuals and organizations at large develop the skills needed to thrive in today's workplace. And as we move into this new normal kind of post-pandemic through this transition. So we're here to help support you, and what better way to do that than in learning and community. So thank you for being here with us. I also want to thank everyone that's been joining and tuning in consistently. Some of you, I was looking at Smart Attendance, and some of you have been to 30 sessions just in the last 6 months. And so I really want to applaud everyone that's been attending, that's been following along and earning badges on the different skills we've been learning over the past, really throughout the pandemic together. And so I just want to give a little shout out to everyone that's been attending week over week. And just a little bit more to dive deep into how these sessions work. We host these community events every week for 45 to 60-minute sessions, and we choose a monthly theme to all work on together. So this month's theme is creativity and innovation. So you'll see a lot of events around how we can kind of think creatively and bring some new ideas and energy into our work today. And these sessions are all led by subject matter experts like James, and we also bring in wonderful guest speakers and thought leaders to share their insights on new topics. A couple of housekeeping items just before I pass this over to James, but this session will be recorded and it'll be available in our free online learning community called Offsite, and Marissa and I will speak on that at the end to give you some more context, but don't worry, that will be available to you after this session. And also these sessions are meant to be really interactive. So please do share your ideas in the chat, share your feedback, share your questions. Marissa and I will be capturing questions in the chat throughout the session so that we get to weave them into the conversation today. And without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to James Jeffley. James is an award-winning international speaker and trainer. He's a professional coach, author, musician, and minister. So if you've taken our classes, you'll know that James likes to sing and brings a lot of fun movement and zest into these sessions. He also works directly with some of LearnIt's largest clients. He has 20 years of experience working with thousands of adults, individuals, leaders, really across the globe to elevate their consciousness and just achieve better results as individuals. He's also a member of Toastmasters General International and a two-time finalist in the World Championship of Public Speaking. So without further ado, let's welcome James.
Thank you, Carly. Thank you, Marissa, Ben, and thanks to all of you for getting up and joining us, no matter what time of day it is in your part of the world. Thank you for being here. It's such an honor to have you with us. So today's topic is we're going to talk about storytelling to sell your big idea. Let me just move some things around here. So can everybody just give me a thumbs up if you have your camera turned on, or type a yes in the chat box. Can everyone hear me, see me, and can you see my slides? We good? Okay, excellent, super. So storytelling to sell your big idea. Okay, question, who loves stories? You can just give me a thumbs up or put a yes in the chat. Yes, we love stories, absolutely. So in the chat box, write in the city you're from, the city you're in right now, and what kind of story you're into, like San Francisco / sci-fi or London / romantic comedies, right? What kind of story you're into, what city and what story. Sacramento and historical fiction, love that, Ashley. Cambridge biographies, LA mystery murder, Guernsey and factual, Cary and historical fiction, historical Fond du Lac, murder mysteries, comedy in Palm, Florida, Tallahassee loves bios, Albany loves comedy. Excellent. So no matter where you're from in the world, we all love stories and we all love different kinds of stories. But sometimes in the business world, we don't think to use storytelling as a tool to get our ideas across, because we think, oh, that's over there in that entertainment world or in that non-businessy world, right, Lars? It's like, oh, that's those stories, that's for my recreational time. Business has to be very serious. Well, in the next few minutes, what I want to share with you is why stories are actually a better vehicle for selling your ideas. And I also want to share what makes stories so compelling and so memorable. The third thing I'm going to share with you is how to structure your story like the pros do to get maximum impact. So that's what we're going to talk about. Dublin, Ireland, bohemian interests. Love that. Oh, a sad story, not for sale. Oh, Lars, thank you. All right. So first thing you know, if you're going to sell your big idea using storytelling, you need to have a storytelling to sell your big idea checklist. All right. So if you're writing this down, here's your checklist. Number one on your checklist, what do you think you need? You need characters. Thank you, Christina. You need a big idea. So if you want to apply what I'm teaching in the next few minutes, write this down. Number one, what's your big idea? What's the idea that you're trying to sell? Do you have an invention, something you want to create? Do you have a business proposal, an idea that you want to sell to your boss or your team or your organization, a new process or procedure or technology? Do you have a business proposal you're trying to sell to a customer or a client? Or do you have a different kind of proposal? Another different kind of big idea you're trying to sell? How you do it? Or are you trying to sell yourself for a promotion or for a new job or to a new customer to get a new client? So take a moment, write down your big idea. And if you are so inclined, if you don't mind sharing, if it's okay to share, drop it in the chat box. What's the thing you're trying to sell? What's the big idea you're trying to get across to somebody? Tour guide. Okay, love that, Paul. Web developer. Okay, great. Medical science liaison. Cool, Christina. New business proposal for songwriting camps. Oh, I love that idea. New method of mass transportation. Oh, I really like that one. Your product. Cool. Increased participation in learning centers. Smart buying house concept. That sounds exciting. If you look through the chat box and you see what other people are putting there and you think, oh, I could use that. Now we've just connected you. I want a commission. So anyway, so what's the idea you're trying to sell? So that's number one. What's the idea? Number two, drop the past. How many of you realize that a lot of the ways you were trying to sell your big ideas before just don't work, or they're not as effective as you'd like to be? It's too confusing. It's too complicated, right? Here are three problems with most business and other presentations you're trying to present your idea. See if this is true for any of you. Number one, not enough information or not enough clear information. You're trying to sell your idea, but you're not getting your point across because you're not painting a clear enough picture for people. How many of you have that issue? Not enough information or not enough clear information. All right, Christina's got that one. Neil has that one. Don't we need to understand the audience? You absolutely need to understand the audience, which goes into deciding how much information and what kind of information. So you got to need to know, you have to know your audience, right? Here's the second thing. Some people suffer with this, too much information. How many of you have sabotaged yourselves with this? You just threw everything into the proposal plus the kitchen sink, right? Angela, me, Tiffany, right? Not you, Stephen or Stefan. You again, Christina, thank you. Carly, that's you, right? And I'm not saying data is bad. I'm not saying data is bad. Data is necessary. You need a certain amount of data. But what you really need is the right amount of data. And what I've discovered in my 200 plus years of teaching and training, consulting and speaking around the world is too many people put too much information in there. How many of you have seen too much information when people are trying to sell ideas? Right, Paul? Right. Okay, yeah. Here's the third common problem with most business proposals. They're boring. Anybody experience that? People before the present tell you all the reasons it will not work. Yeah, those two, all the naysayers, Carlotta. Oh, that's never going to work. That's not the way we've always done it, right? Forget them. So there are a bunch of other things that sabotage your selling your big idea, but those are three big ones. Not enough information or the right kind of information or clear information, too much information, or it's just boring. Let me give you an example. How many of you have ever gotten this email? They sent you an email, and in the subject line, they said, oh, let's discuss your proposal. Anybody get that email? Now, when you're looking at this email, what are you thinking? You've never gotten that email, Stephen? You will. It's just a matter of time. Is that enough information for you? No. What proposal? I'm working on 6 different things right now. Which one are you talking about? When do you want to work on the proposal? Do you want me to call you? Are we going to send endless emails back and forth? Right? There's not enough actionable information there. So now I got to pick up the phone and call them and find out, okay, what's going on? So not enough information. they have not sold me on the idea of meeting with them to discuss the proposal. How many of you have ever gotten this? You sat in a presentation and somebody put this up on a slide. Lars, you had this one yesterday, right? It's like, this is my life, right? Right, Olivia? And you're sitting there in the audience, you're looking at this and you're going, what? Now, this could be an email. How many of you gotten long-winded emails, right? With tons of text and all of that. What do you think when you see slides or emails or presentations like this? What do you think? Here's what I think is going through your mind. TLDR. Exactly, Latanya. Exactly. You were reading my mind. Too much to understand. Livy goes, I call them. What does TLDR mean for those who may not know? Latanya, put that in the chat box. What does TLDR mean? Too long, don't read. That's how most of us do this. Or you get this. Overwhelming, you turn it off. Yeah, too late, don't read. So, hey, you got to hit me before 9 p.m. I'm not reading your stuff till tomorrow. How many of you ever get emails that look like that? Or you see presentations that look like that, right? You're sitting there going, not only am I not going to read this, but this is also what? Boring. What makes this boring? Not for everybody, but for a lot of people. What makes this boring? Good nightmare. It's too long, absolutely. Too much to read. Is there something missing? No color. It's too dense. There's no white. There's not enough white space. There's no pictures, right? It's just a wall of text. It's like somebody turned on the fire hose of data and just hit you with a word tsunami. No headings, right? It's difficult to follow. Let me tell you what research shows. You might want to jot this down. If you're sending an email to someone, this might help you today, and your email is longer than 2 lines, you're going to lose 30% of your readers. 30% of the people you send that email to that's longer than 2 lines, they're going to stop reading at the end of the second line. How many of you know that's true for you? If it's more than 2 lines, you're just going to skim. Right, Dave? Thank you for being honest, right? If your email is longer than 4 lines, guess how many folks you lose? What percentage? 80. Christina, you're right on the way. It's 70%. You're going to lose 70% of your audience if your email is longer than 4 lines. Now, don't believe me. The next time you sit down at your email and you're looking at somebody's long-winded dissertation in an email, note when you stop reading. 4 lines, I'm done. That's it. Next, swipe left. Do you have the citation for that? Yes, somewhere, but not in front of me right now. I'll have to look that up, Christina. So you don't want to leave people looking like this. One person's excited, everybody else is shocked, horrified, or asleep. That's not the impact that you want when you're trying to sell your big idea, right? So here's why stories are a much better vehicle for selling your ideas. Number one, stories are universal. We got all kinds of people here from all around the world, right? All ages, all backgrounds, etc. Everybody in this meeting, everybody on the planet grew up with stories. Yes? Everybody, we all got stories. Like mathematics and music and art, stories are told across the globe in every language. Doesn't matter what your native language is. You got stories. You got stories. People here from the UK, you got stories, right? Channel Islands, you got stories. All across the US, you got stories, right? India, you got stories. South America, you got stories. Everybody got stories. So regardless of your native tongue, stories and storytelling is actually in you. It's within you. There is a storyteller within you. How many of you remember stories today that you learned when you were a small child? I hear you, Nirmal. Is it Nirmal? connecting them to the big eye topic is, yeah, it can be hard. It's about to become easier. How many of you remember stories today that you learned when you were a child? Why? And that was for some of us a little while ago. Why is it that you still remember today with such vivid clarity and detail stories that you were told 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago or more? Why do you remember those things today? Yes, Nirmal, there was emotional connection. There was emotional connection. If you just throw data at people with no emotional context, nothing they can relate to emotionally, it's going to be like that group I showed you a moment ago. Everybody's asleep, right? So there's got to be something people can latch onto. For example, most people don't know this about me. I see one of my dear friends in here right now. Hey, Wida, how you doing? Most people don't know this about me, but right here under my chin, I have a little scar there. I kind of wear a little goatee there, a little beard, so it kind of covers it up. But I have a little scar under there. It's about an inch long or so. How did I get that scar? Well, it involves a toilet. Yes. Okay. When I was about 4 years old, yes, that's actually me. How many of you are thinking, oh, he's so cute? What happened? When I was about 4 years old, I remember loving, one of my favorite activities as a kid was to go in the bathroom and watch my father shave. I didn't understand the process because I was young. All I knew was at some point his face was kind of scruffy, right? He had hair on it, but he'd go in the bathroom. He'd put this magical, creamy substance on his face. He'd take this long metal thing that he said I should never touch because it was sharp and I would hurt myself. So, okay. And he would wash it around in the water. And then he would drag this metal thing across his face using this magic foam. And then little by little, all the scruffy hair would disappear. At 4, I thought that was the coolest thing ever, right? We didn't have cell phones or the internet back then. So watching my dad shave was the coolest thing ever. Okay, how's the toilet involved? Well, I was 4, so I was little. So I had to stand on top of the toilet to be able to get to a height where I could see clearly what he was doing. That worked well most mornings until one morning I lose my balance. And as I'm falling, I catch my chin on the edge of the sink. That was not fun. Blood everywhere. My mom screaming, "Oh my God, my baby, my baby." And then I spent the next few hours at the doctor's office getting stitched up. And that's why I have the scar there. So that's the story about how I fell off the toilet when I was 4. Oh, so who can relate to any part of that story? Either being injured or falling or having some activity, watching your parents. Who can relate to any part of that story? Carlotta, Carly can, right? Thank you. Marissa can. Similar age in the bathroom, right? Right. And you know what? If I see you in a class in the coming days or weeks or months, you may not remember my name, but you might remember my face. And you're like, oh, you're the guy with the scar in his chin because you fell off the toilet. You're the toilet faller off guy. That's not how I want to be known in the world. I'm just sharing a story to connect with you. So let me ask you this question. Fell into a water tank trying to change a light bulb. Now there's a story, Francis. Fainted when I was younger playing tennis and got stitches on my chin. Oh my, Marissa, thank you. So what stories inspire you? Think about this. What kinds of stories inspire you, motivate you, want you to make you want to take action? Stories that are relatable. So how do I translate my story in a business context? It's got to be relatable. This is where somebody said earlier, I have to know my audience. I also have to know what's important to my audience. If I'm talking to a group of engineers, I have to know what's important to engineers. If I'm talking to a group of finance people, I have to know what's important to them. If I'm talking to a group of HR people or salespeople, right? Or the people in the C-suite, I need to know what's important to them in general, but also what specifically is keeping them up at night these days, or what their specific goals are or their needs. And it has to be authentic, Caroline. You can't tell somebody else's story. You have to tell your own story. So think about the stories that inspire you. Regardless of the audience that you'll be selling your big idea to, here are 3 things that are true. This is from Harvard Business Publishing. Number 1, about 40% of the people that you're going to be selling your big idea to are primarily visual learners, right? So for these people, we assimilate information visually and you know, orally and through our senses, etc. But primarily for these people, they learn best from videos and diagrams, pictures, charts, graphs, illustrations. They have to see your story. What have you noticed about my slides so far this morning? Simple. Thank you, Christina. Clean pictures, less words. You came here to listen to me. You didn't come here to listen to me read my slides to you word by word, line by line. Let that serve you as you design your presentations. Visual, even if data is shared, absolutely, right? So for about 40% of the people in your audience, let's say 4 out of 10, they're going to need to see visual representations of what it is you're talking about. Otherwise, they're going to miss key information. Another 40% will be auditory learners. They assimilate information primarily through lectures, discussion, through what they hear. So you have to be a storyteller. Don't be afraid to use your voice, to speak, to share it, because, you know, they might get something from the pictures, but when they hear that inflection in your voice, when they hear you changing the pace of what you say, when they hear you inserting a pause to allow them to digest the big point you just shared, that's when it's going to connect for them. Am I making any amount of sense here to anybody? Okay. Lars asked, will there be time to talk about how a story can be used for priming purpose in the future? Yeah, you can plant seeds with your audience, Lars. You can plant a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. So when you have to give the big presentation for the big idea, boom, you've already gotten them thinking about it. But you have to be strategic in your thinking, okay? I'm going to send an email here. I'm going to have a one-on-one here. I'm going to go present to this group over there. And at each time, I'm going to share a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. So when I share the big idea, it's not foreign to anyone. It's kind of like you've been telling the story line by line, chapter by chapter, and the presentation is just the punchline. You're resolving it for everyone. Now here's the big finish. Ta-da. The other 20% are kinesthetic learners. And these are people who generally learn best by doing, experiencing, or here's the key one, feeling. We've all been impacted by this thing called COVID over the last, year plus. And so you may not have the opportunity to be face to face with the people that you want to sell your big ideas to. That doesn't mean that the kinesthetic people in your audience can't get something from your presentation. You have to make them feel something. And what's one thing that you could do to make them feel? Emotions. And you know where we get emotions from? Telling stories. So jot this down. If you want to be impactful, if you want to have a better chance of success with selling your big idea, they need to see you, hear you, and feel you. They need to see your idea, hear your idea, and feel your idea. All right. So what makes stories so compelling and memorable? Well, Jerome Bruner is a pioneering psychologist in the field of storytelling, and his work has been cited in more than 48,000 times in scholarly publications, making them some of the most influential works of the 20th century. Jerome Bruner. He says from his research, stories are up to 22 times more memorable than facts or figures alone. Up to 22 times more memorable than facts or figures alone. And people are twice as likely to be persuaded into action when a story is included. You can double your chances. Now, this is not a guarantee, but according to his research, you double your chances of people actually taking action on what you present if a story's included. How many of you have said yes to somebody's big idea because they told you a story? Right? If it moved you, chances are it's going to move the people you're trying to convince too. So let me share with you 3 types of business deciders. When you're going in front of people in the workplace, right? And even outside of the workplace, there are generally 3 kinds of business deciders. This was from a 2-year project where researchers at Harvard studied the decision-making styles of more than 1,600 executives across a wide range of industries. And they interviewed participants about, the various facets of their decision-making process. And people don't always make decisions in the same way. A lot of it depends on their circumstances, but research shows that when it comes to making tough, high-stakes choices that involve a lot of complex considerations, people tend to default to one dominant decision-making style. They've outlined 5. We've boiled them down to 3. So number 1, you've got story-based decision makers. When you're trying to sell your big idea to a story-based decision maker, what they do is they make a picture, they make a story in their head, and then they make decisions based on how that story plays out. How many of you would say that sounds like me? I'm a story-based decision maker. I got to play that story in my head. And if it comes, sometimes, Christina, right? Number 2, you have the logic-based decision maker. For these people, they don't necessarily need to see the visuals, but it needs to make sense to them. It has to follow some kind of order. If you're just jumbled and all over the place and they don't know where there's a beginning, middle, and end, you've lost the dancers. So for this decision maker, you need to be logical. You need to be orderly, structural, organized. It has to flow in a logical way. The third kind is the evidence-based decision maker. For these folks, you got to show them the numbers. They need facts, statistics, empirical research, case studies, from objective sources, from factual sources, right? Not just, well, I heard a guy say. No, you show, like somebody asked earlier, where's the citation for that? That's an evidence-based decider, or at least it was in that moment. Does this make sense, folks? So think about which one of these you are. Yes, Tiffany, you're reading my mind. If you don't know what type of person is in your audience, then what do? Yes, Dave, you got to present all 3. You got to present hard facts and evidence and research. It's got to be logical and flow in a sensible fashion. And there needs to be a story. You got to have a better chance of meeting all 3 requirements, all 3 needs. You got to do all 3. Now, how many of you are like hardcore left brain logical people that think, no, my story, my big idea is enough on its own. The data is fine. We should be practicing unemotional decision making. Anybody think that? Multiple personalities. I feel you, Lars. Who thinks we just stick to the facts and figures and we don't need emotions? We don't need storytelling. Anybody? Yeah. According to the neurobiology of decision making, unemotional decision making is not a thing. It's just not a thing. Antonio Damasio, who is the founder and director of the Brain and Creativity Institute at the University of Southern California, has conducted over 30 years of research in the area of emotions and decision making. And what he's discovered is that people have difficulty making even simple decisions, if we have damage to the emotional center of our brain, the limbic area. It's the regulator that logically listens to our emotions. If we get damage to that area, the prefrontal cortex, we have trouble making even simple decisions, right? So the parts of our brain that govern emotions, if those are damaged, it's difficult, if not near impossible, for us to make even simple decisions. So emotion is a key role in our decision-making process as human beings. Or as I like to say it, we think we're Spock, we're really Kirk. Any Star Trek fans here? Right? We think we're Spock. Spock was a logical Vulcan. It had to make sense. Kirk, he was the emotional one. Most of us think we're logical. We're not. We're emotional. We then try to rationalize with logic. Is this helpful to anybody? All right. So let me talk about the third thing now. How to structure your story like the pros do to get better impact. How many of you have seen any of these movies? Avatar, any of the Jurassic Park movies, any of the Star Wars franchise, Marvel Comics Universe, Avengers, Thor, Captain America, the Titanic. Have you seen it? All of them, right? Some of us have probably binge watched those on Netflix during the last 12 to 14 months of the pandemic. I finished Netflix last month, by the way. All of Netflix. I'm working on Hulu now. What do they have in common? What do these movies have in common? Other than being, giant blockbuster movies. Lots of different emotions. They're all amazing. Adventure, action, story. Yeah. Number one, they're among the highest grossing movies and franchises of all time. Two, they all follow a classic story structure that I'm going to share with you right now. Two things. Number one, they storyboard. So before your next big presentation where you're trying to sell your big idea, don't sit down and go intro, thesis, point one, point two, point three, subpoint, summary, conclusion. You're writing for structure. You're not writing for impact. If you wrote for impact, you would play this out as scenes in your mind. Where do I want to start the audience? Then where do I want to take them? Then where do I want to take them? Then where do I want to leave them? Play this out in scenes. You don't have to map all the dialogue out. You don't have to map all the details out. High level thoughts. We want to start here with the backstory, and then we want to bring people to the present. We want to talk about the impact, and then here's my solution, and then I ask them to buy my big idea. Something like that. Does that make sense, folks? Storyboard just the big ideas or central themes. Now, second thing, to further expand on this, there are 5 key elements of the story. Many of you probably already know this, right? You got to have characters. In a business context, this answers the question, who? Who or what are you talking about? Are you talking about that new piece of technology? Are you talking about software, hardware? Are you talking about a new process? Are you talking about a new whatever, right? It could be a person or a team. Who or what are you talking about? The characters. You have to provide enough detail, enough information so people understand what you're talking about. Setting, this is the location of the action. In a business context, this is when. We need to focus on this for the fourth quarter. This is where. This is a local issue, or it's regional, it's national, or it's global, right? Setting answers where, and it also answers to a degree when. Where are we talking about? When are we talking about? Number 3, the plot. This is the main part of the story around which everything else is based. What's going on? What's happening? This answers what and why. What's happening? Why is it happening? And also, what do we need to be concerned about, right? Or what's the opportunity here? The fourth part of this, some would argue, might even be the most important part: conflict. How many of you have seen a really boring story or read a really boring book? Seen a boring movie? Anybody? maybe why that was boring. There's no conflict. No one was being chased. There was no problem to solve. There was no imminent threat, danger, or peril. It's just, okay, somebody got up and they went to work and they went home. Okay, that's my life. And now it's not even that. Bedroom, office, kitchen, bedroom, office, kitchen, bathroom, right? There's no conflict in there. So this is where you tell people the why. Why do they need to buy your big idea? What problem are you trying to solve? What's the impact if they don't buy your big idea? And if you don't solve this problem, right? This is where you have to press it home with folks. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Or what is the new reality you're trying to create that's so much better than your current reality? And finally, every story needs a resolution. Who loves cliffhangers? Paul, you're the only one. Right? They leave you right at the end of the season and you don't know what's going to happen to the hero or the heroine. You're like, and tune in next season. No, I got to wait till October before I know what happens to my favorite character. No, I want to know now, right? Don't leave people hanging in the business world. Folks need resolution. They want to know, okay, how do we resolve this? What is your solution to this? Does this make sense, folks? Do you see how to tie these different elements of story to your selling your big idea? Here's why I think it's better to use this than just the age-old, book report format. Because no matter where you were born, you grew up with stories. They're infinite, they're eminently relatable. As I said earlier, they're universal. So if you're following classic story structure, people just subconsciously relate to that. It follows something that's familiar to them. And if it's familiar, chances are it's going to be more comfortable and more accessible to them. You have a greater likelihood of them listening. When you tell stories, people lean in. They listen more attentively because they want, oh, this is interesting. Here's a story. If you're just giving presentations with facts and figures, it's like, yeah, I hear that. You got a million of those, right? What you're battling against is sameness. Every presentation starts to look and sound like every other presentation. But you throw a story in there that nobody else shares, or you wrap it up in a container of a story, all of a sudden people are listening. They're leaning in. They're paying attention to you. All right. So taking all of that, how do I do this in a simple step-by-step process? Number one, paint your characters. Who or what are you talking about? What's the problem you're trying to solve or trying to avoid? What's the story of the solution? Focus on the benefits. What's the story of the solution? Well, if we do this, then we won't have that. And then finally, what's the takeaway for people? What's the lesson here, right? What do you want people to remember from your story? How do we have a compelling start which hits their dopamine like an open, mid, close insights, please?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit better. Just kind of tired.
Oh, well, I hope you're feeling better. So to answer Hari Priya's question, one of the things that I've done before sometimes in presentations is I've just put one number up on the beginning slide. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. If I started my presentation with that, morning, James Jeffley, and I put this as my first slide, 500 million. What are you thinking right now?
Your income.
Income, but is there any kind of currency symbol at the beginning of this? There's no dollars, there's no rupees, there's no yuan, there's no yen, there's no francs, there's no euros. We don't know that that's currency. If that was my salary, I probably wouldn't be here doing this event. I'd be on my yacht somewhere out in the ocean, just right. A little, little beverage, a fruit juice, Dave, right? So it's curiosity, right? You, I only gave you a little bit of information. There's not enough information there to solve for why. You're going, is that $500 million widgets, people? Is that the size of my bonus this year? Is that what is that number? You don't know. And because you have not given people enough information, they lean in because most people can't handle this. Who wants the final knock knock? We want resolution, but there's not enough information there to resolve this. So what if I started out by saying 500 million? 500 million. Every year in the United States, 500 million work days are lost. Every year in the United States, 500 million work days are lost, and over 50% of those are lost due to one thing: stress. Hi, my name is James Jeffley, and today I want to talk to you about our company's new wellness program. And if you take advantage of all the tools that we have available in this program, maybe you won't be one of the 500 million work days. So you can share a lot of information without having to put that on the slide, but you tease people with just enough information to make them lean in. Does that help? Do you like that, Wendy? Thank you. When you're talking about your characters, you have to make them real. You have to make them relatable, right? You have to provide, some little details to relate them to your audience, right? I was talking to an engineer, right? And the engineer was telling me blah, blah, blah. If I'm talking to a group of engineers, it would be nice to tell a story about my conversation with a fellow engineer or finance people or HR people or whatever. I want to find information that's relevant to the audience that you're talking to. You're not trying to do some kind of Jedi mind trick manipulation here. What you're trying to do is find relevance and then build rapport and relate your story to your audience. You'll have greater impact. So you got to make the characters real for them. It can't be some hypothetical possible situation. Even if you're trying to sell a big idea that doesn't exist yet, you're trying to create a new thing. Somebody put something about some new form of transportation in there or a transportation system. You have to be able to relate the current transportation problems to what other. How many of you have been stuck in a car before? Waiting and waiting, going nowhere, right? So now you're back in the car going, I only had to go 2 miles and I've been in here an hour. If you live in any major metropolitan area, you know that's true. So now you got your audience emotionally connected and wanting to listen to this new transportation idea that you have because they're tired of sitting in traffic too. Yes, Bay Area traffic is a pain. A story without problems is a boring story. Problems drive action, not data. Problems drive action. And let me be more specific. Solving a problem drives action. Human beings are wired to look for problems and to solve them. In fact, if you have 2 presentations, one that talks about solving a problem and one that talks about creating this new thing that doesn't actually solve a problem, most of the people in your audience would be more inclined to pay attention to the first one where you're solving a problem. Because that's just how we are. We're used to looking around to see if anything's going to threaten us, and we want to mitigate that. Once we feel safe, okay, now let's talk about your space shuttle project, right? So you've got to make sure that you include the problem. Add data to your stories. Add data. Now, this is where some people go off track. Now, I said earlier, don't hit people with the fire hose of data. You don't want to give them tsunami, but you do need to include some data. Data is not just numbers, it's information. It can be numbers, but it can also be statistics or stories or anecdotes, right? It can, testimonials, case studies. It can be a number of things. It's not just numbers on a page. So how do I know which data to get? What's the problem? And what's the solution? Find the data that clearly highlights that there is a problem, one, and two, the severity of the problem. And three, what happens? What's the impact to us if we don't do anything about the problem? What's the problem to make sure there is one? What's the impact of it right now? What's it costing us? And what's the impact going to be if we do nothing about it? Those are the three pieces of data you need. And then, to the extent you can, what data can you provide regarding your solution? Has anyone done this before, right? Or is this a completely novel idea? Has anyone done something similar to this? If so, are there case studies? Is there information that you can extrapolate from to say, well, our thing is like this, except our thing does one thing better. So, you know, we could achieve this result that these other people got, plus maybe one more. How do you gather that?
Hey, James, really quickly, can you say those one more time? I think people loved that list you shared.
So you got to look at your problem. And the three data points I think you need are: one, data that indicates that it is actually a problem. Something's on fire, something's bleeding, you're losing cash, right? Something that indicates clearly this is a problem, and for who. Two, what is the impact of that problem? How bad is it really? And this is where you have to be completely honest, right? Be honest all the time. And then three, what's the impact if we do nothing about this problem? So here's a problem. It's costing us $500,000 a day. If we do nothing about it, by the end of the year, well, we won't have a company. That's right. So those, I think, are the three key data points. Where do you get that data? Look at other people's work. Somebody's probably doing research in your organization. Search the internet, search reputable trade publications, universities, that sort of thing. Usually not on a website that ends in .com. That's not always the best, most reliable source of information. Take a survey of people in your organization who's actually affected by this issue. Well, I surveyed all 1,000 employees, and 99.9% of them say they're having this problem too. So, okay, it's a big thing. Interview people, ask knowledgeable parties, right? Do some focus groups, do some interviews, and look at what reporting tools are already available to in your organization. Maybe it's just a matter of going to somebody and saying, hey, Paul, run this report for me. Hey, Wita, run this report for me. Boom, and there's the information. You may already have access to it. All right. Get if not .com, .edu, Tiffany, .gov from, reliable, reputable sources, that sort of thing. .com isn't necessarily bad, but people generally have an agenda. They're trying to, force their agenda or sell something. So once you have all of that, get strategic. You start to weave the data and the stories all together. Right? No one cares about a problem they don't believe is actually a problem. Okay, why should we do anything about this? It's not a problem for me, or I don't see it being a problem for anybody else. So as I said, what data can we offer to prove the problem is actually a problem? So think about this. For your big idea, you're trying to sell this at work or wherever you're trying to sell this. What data can you offer to prove that the problem is a problem? Just jot it down. Take a moment. What data can you offer to prove that your problem is a problem? What is the harm? Who is being harmed by it? To what degree? How long has this been going on? Has anything been done about it? All right. Here's the last thing I want to share. If you're going to make a presentation and add data to your presentation, what's the problem? What's the story of the solution? What's the predicted future if we adopt your solution, right? What did we learn from this? What's the takeaway? And then what's the overall story that you're wrapping this up in? Excess costs against profit. Okay, Paul. Then go out and get the data. For your big idea that you're trying to sell, what type of data might you need to find or collect to support those three steps? the problem, the story, and the predicted future. What data might you need to gather to help you tell that story? Okay, that's all I have for you, but we have a little bit of time, so I will gladly take questions.
James, thanks so much. We had one that I just had saved in the chat here. Let's see. Give me 1 second. Now I've lost it, but I think it was from Chantal. Let me see here really quickly. She said, yeah, in writing. So if you're maybe not presenting, but you're trying to sell your big idea, maybe via communication writing, how do you imply a pause? Or like, would that be, could you use a visual, or how do you kind of create space in written communication, if that's even possible?
Either put your next idea on the next page, leave a little bit of white space after you ask that question or make that big point, or drop in a picture or use some kind of a pull quote. You know what I mean by pull quote?
Yeah, yes, I do. It's a very good idea. True. Thank you.
Because it's a way of taking a little bit of data, pulling it out and making it slightly larger to get people to focus on that. If you look at any text, right, you close your eyes, you look at that text, open your eyes, and then notice what's the first thing your eyes look at. Your eyes will gravitate to the most visually different or interesting thing on that page. If all text looks the same, then people don't know where to focus, and it's easy for them to lose track and lose interest. But if you're putting pictures, charts, graphs, pull quotes in, that gives, or section headings, bold, etc., that gives the eye a way to navigate visually, and then people, that suggests a certain level of structure to them. Or you've highlighted something, so that's what I should be paying attention to. Because people skim. We skim. So make the things you want them to pay attention to stick out.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Carly.
Somebody wanted the story structure slide, so I'm going to put that up.
Awesome.
What else?
We had
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, James. Yeah, no, we had, there's a couple coming up, but Christina had a good one too. She said, it can be hard to integrate storytelling when presenting scientific research to scientists or clinicians. Any suggestions? I also think that goes largely into, people that are, if you're presenting to people that are really data driven, I think that's also applicable. So any suggestions to presenting research?
Yeah, some people start off in the middle of the forest. Data. That's just going to shut even data-driven people down. You got to get 30,000 feet above the forest and give people the overarching view, right? Talk to me about the forest first before you drop me down in the middle of it in thousands and thousands of trees. So I might start that off by talking about the problem that we're trying to solve, or tell a story about someone who is experiencing the problem that your solution solves. There's a little girl in Calcutta. Her name is, so do you notice what you just did? The moment I started that, there's a little girl in Calcutta. How many of you just leaned in with your heart, with your mind, and you wanted to know the story of the little girl in Calcutta, right? So tell that story, assuming that the story about the little girl in Calcutta has something directly related to do with the problem and your solution. So I might start it with the story about the individual, talk about how the problem affects her, talk about how it affects a bunch of people, and then talk about how our solution makes life better for people, like the big group, but then also how it makes her life better. Bookends, right? You start with the story, you give your big idea in the middle, and you resolve the story at the end. Oh, thank you, Livia. Appreciate that. How to couch your voice if you have an irritating voice. Has anyone ever told you you have an irritating voice?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
Talk to me. Tell me. Say something.
Well, I've been told that my voice is really from the nose and it sounds way older than I am. So young people, young crowd tend to not have any interest.
Are we talking professionally here or?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I work with kids. I work with young adults.
Okay. Here's what I would say. One, yes, you can absolutely work with a vocal coach. And one of the things they might have you do is practice expanding or exploring the range of your voice. This is how I'm talking now, but have you noticed during the presentation, I've used different kinds of vocal techniques and inflections? Have I changed my voice at all during the presentation? Was there a time when I was a little more excited and talking faster and talking in this kind of pitch? And there was a time when I was slower and talking down in this register. So
That's expression, not changing your voice.
Yeah. So, but you can even work with a coach to help you do that, to explore different timbres of your voice. So now I'm talking down here and now I'm moving up here and now I'm moving up here. So most people only work within a narrow range of what they've explored, whether it's their voice or their body movement, etc. You've got a much bigger range than you think you do. So working with a vocal coach can help you explore that range and expand it. And I don't think you have an irritating voice at all. So don't believe everything you hear.
Oh, but that's interesting, and thank you.
You're very welcome.
Hey,
Anybody
James,
else?
thanks so much. I want to close this out and make sure we get some time for closing remarks. I know we had a lot of questions come through the chat, but we can, of course, keep the conversation going in our community offsite. So I want to make sure everyone knows just how to join our community. I'm going to put the link in there as well. But offsite is our free online learning community. We have these weekly sessions every week. And so it's the best way to stay kind of connected to what's newest and freshest. Thanks, Peter. Great to see you. And so we'll also include the slide deck in there, and you can also continue to ask questions. James is in there. All of our instructors are in offsite. And our promise to you is if you ask a question in offsite, we'll get back to you within 48 hours. So we want to keep the conversation going with you. We invite you to bring your questions and share them with our community. And it's also, we have about 3,000 members and growing. So if you're looking to network, looking to grow your own community, we'd love to see you in there. And just quickly, these are the events we have coming up. Of course, we'll be emailing out these slides as well. This calendar as well. But the easiest way to stay most up to date on all of our programming is via Offsite. And as an Offsite member, you also get immediate access to the Zoom link. So you can click right in and join immediately from there. It makes it a little bit more seamless to tune in. So with that, I want to thank James so much for being here. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and we will see you next week. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Be well. I'm so glad, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you. And also, I just want to say, if you really enjoyed today's session and you're interested in bringing a session like this to your team, and you want to dive deeper and do a private workshop with your team, or even just you're interested in more individualized coaching, please email Marissa and I. We'll be sending out an email after this as well, but always happy to dive deeper with you and work with you and your team.
Yeah. The side of my headphone has been out.
All right. Take care, everyone.
Hey, Carly,
Take care, everyone.
don't end the meeting just yet. I want to
answer
Sheila's question here. Sheila, you
there? Of course.
Sheila, you there?
I'm sorry. Yes, I am. Sorry, James.
Okay, yeah, thank you. So if I have to sell a tracking solution for cargo, ship, air to high-tech and medical prospects, what ideas can you recommend for a compelling opener?